Hello guys, so we continue creating our checklister project. This is video number 4 or part 3 if you count the first one as non-technical one. And today we're taking care of admin panel part of managing checklists and checklist groups. Checklists are divided into groups, and then every checklist will have tasks. So the tasks will be covered in the future videos, and now we're covering checklist groups and checklists. For now, we don't have anything around them in the database, in the controllers, in the views, nothing. So first we need to create the database model. And the database model is pretty simple here. So checklist group has many checklist items, and each of those has just the name field, and that's it. So nothing more. So we create two models. PHP artisan make model checklist group minus M for migration. That's it. And then the same we will have checklist. So checklist like this. Then migrations and models. In migrations we have checklist groups, table, string, name. And I always add soft deletes everywhere for most client projects, because you never know. Sometimes client deletes something by mistake, so it's a really good practice in my opinion to have soft deletes almost everywhere. So that's checklist groups, and then checklist belongs to checklist groups. So we have foreign ID for checklist group. I think ID it will be called automatically. Constraint. And same table string name and table soft deletes. Like this. Then the models, we should make all of those fillable. So checklist group use soft deletes and fillable name. PHP Storm autocompletes some stuff for me, like soft deletes here. And then checklist here, same here, soft deletes and fillable checklist group ID and name. Okay, we have the data. Let's migrate. PHP artisan migrate. Success. Now let's build routes and controllers. And first, controllers. We need to manage checklist groups and checklists. So PHP artisan make controller admin checklist group controller, for example. Resource, because it will be almost like a CRUD. And the same thing with checklist controller. They will be almost identical. Okay, and now we can create routes for them. We go to routes web PHP, and in the same route group as admin, we have the same route resource, but instead of pages, we'll have checklist groups, for example, with underscore, and checklists, and we add them to checklist group controller class and checklist controller class, like this. And now in the sidebar, we need to view those checklist groups according to this design or roughly similar. And we have the menu item with example of parent and child. So let's create another group. We have a sidebar blade from what I remember. Yep, sidebar blade. So if user is admin, we continue this tradition of, we have admin group, we have another group of, let's make it more pretty. So instead of admin, manage checklists. And actually here I remember that we need to make that project multi-language. So if you do have a request from client to make it multi-language, always don't forget to add this function everywhere. Instead of using just alt text, do it like this. So I'll just quickly replace all of those in the sidebar. Okay, great. And now below manage checklists, we won't just have menu items as static menu items. We will have actual checklist groups and checklist names below as a parent and child drop-down menu. To do that, let's just query all the checklist groups. For now, we will do it in the blade. It's a bad practice and we will move it later elsewhere. But for now, for simplicity, for each of checklist group all as group, and we need to make them with checklists. So if we open the model, we need to specify the has many relationship checklists, return this has many checklist model class like this. So checklist group with checklists get as group. Okay, then we show the group as parent menu item, so end for each. And here I'll copy and paste the lower example of base because it's a parent and child. This is exactly what we will need to do. So I paste here li, then we make it more readable, and instead of base we show checklist group, or actually group name. And then for each of the other items, so for each of group checklists as checklist, we view the checklist menu item. So this, something like this, more readable. So checklist name again. Something like this. And then where would the routes lead? Let's delete the pages part. Actually, we don't need this one either. Right. Of course, I forgot for end for each here. Thank you, PHP Storm, for having it underlined, so I've noticed. And now the links. This link for checklist group should be to route admin checklist groups edit for checklist group or group ID. The other link will be for editing the checklist. So subgroup checklists edit with checklist ID. But of course, for now, we don't have any groups or checklists. We could, of course, seed it from the database, but let's imagine a fresh scenario with nothing in the database, and we need to add, or actually, in any case, we need to add the create links. So we have for each of the groups as lists, and then after that for each, we should have li with create new checklist. So create new checklist, or checklist group. Actually, let's make it a bit shorter. So new checklist group like this with a link, for now without any styling, to route admin checklist groups create, or groups. And let's refresh our page, how it looks. Manage checklists, and we have that link. Of course, without styling it looks ugly, so let's actually assign some kind of style to it. So navbar item like this. Is it better? Nope, the link itself should be styled as well. So class here, and a bit better, new checklist group. Okay, so now if we click that checklist group, it will show the blank page for us because we haven't created that, but it didn't show any error, so it does work. So now let's create the form for creating checklist group. So we open checklist group controller, this one, and we have the create function here. And in here, we just return the view of admin.checklistGroups create, or groups like this. And let's create that create page. Let's open up our blade file for any blade file. So home blade, for example, which extends the layouts app. And we do file save as folder checklist groups. And it will create the folder for me, the PHP Storm, and then create blade. Okay, we save as, and then let's change the title to new checklist group. Let's just put in some TBD, to be done. And let's change that to column D12 for the full page, and let's refresh our page. So new checklist group. Oh, it should be admin checklist groups. Okay, cool. I won't edit that specifically because you can see that I'm doing a lot of things on the fly. I'm making mistakes, and that's part of the job. So views admin, and then checklist groups should be moved to admin. Refactor, great. And now refresh. Yep, we have new checklist group and then TBD. But actually that create blade comes from the default Laravel UI that was generated, but we are actually using Core UI theme now. So let's see the Core UI source. I've opened it up for the forms example, and actually there's no container or justified content center. It's a bit different layout. So if we open app blade, our main thing, it finishes with main class cmain, and then inside of every page should be container fluid and class fade in. So we need to change our create blade to, instead of container, we have container fluid. In here, class fade in, and only then we have rows, something like class row. And then we have call inside. Let's reformat that with PHP Storm. And now let's refresh our page to see if it looks a bit better. Refresh. Yep, it does look a bit better, and fade in effect is also in here. Now the forms, how the form look like. Let's take a look at the form example here. Div class card, card header and card body. We implemented that already. So what is inside of card body? A row for every form element, form group. And let's actually copy and paste full form element. So copy element, we paste it here. And let's see how it looks in our case, visually. Okay, enter your name. Great. We actually do need the name. It's just checklist group name, ID name, placeholder, checklist group name. But remember translations. So like this, and also here the name should be also translated. Now submit button. Let's add a submit button here somewhere. Yep, we do have that submit, so let's see the source, inspect. Oh, we have card footer for it. Great. Copy element. So card and then card footer here. Reset, we don't need the reset. And instead of submit, I prefer save. So let's make it save and refresh the page. We have a gap here from somewhere. Why? Oh, because it's card footer one level above. So here, it should be inside of the card, of course, obviously. So here, great. And now let's build the actual form. The form should be, for example, on this level. So form, action, route, admin, checklist, groups, store method, method post. Then we need to add that form below here, cut and paste. Then we need CSRF protection. So CSRF like this, and we're probably good to go. So we go back to our checklist groups controller. We have a store method, and for validation, I tend to use form requests. So we generate PHP Artisan, make request, store checklist group request, like this. Then instead of request, we use that one. So store checklist request. And then if we go inside here, we return authorized true and rules name required. Or actually required and unique. And I tend to use array instead of separator. So required and unique like this. And then we can do checklist group create, and parameter is request validated. So if you use form request, you can have request validated with only the fields that are listed in here. So instead of using request all, you specify exactly the fields. And then return, redirect. We redirect where? Not actually sure. Home probably, route home for now. Because we don't have checklist groups. And let's try it out if it saves anything. And then we will add some validation, some more stuff. So let's try it out, but it didn't work. Why? Name required unique. And do we have the name? Maybe we forgot the ID name. Oh, of course, it's ID name, but not name. And now let's try again, refresh, enter something. Oh, of course, unique. It cannot be just unique in everything. It's unique in the table. So unique checklist groups like this. Refresh again, continue, and we have our checklist group on the left. Yay! Now let's add the validation rules here somewhere, and I prefer Laravel default validation. In the documentation they provide for each like this. They provide an example, and actually bootstrap example, in our case it's perfect, to be placed on top of the form. So here, for example, inside of the card, you can place here, and if any error appears, it will just list as for each. So let's try it out. Let's refresh and let's try to enter another checklist group with the same name, which is actually, I won't repeat it. So 4A's and then another one, 4A's. It should validate with the name has already been taken. Great, that's exactly what we wanted. And now let's try to build the edit form, but immediately I see kind of a wrong thing from Core UI. It doesn't work. The link doesn't work. The link for the parent just opens the children items and that's it. And that's not what we need. We need to remove the class of navbar drop-down toggle, and then it removes our arrow here, but then the link actually works. So we then land on edit of checklist groups, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's have create blade and then file save as of edit blade. So edit, and what we will change is action of not store, it would be update. Method is the same post, it's just input, or method actually put from what I remember. And here edit checklist group, and in here for the input we will have value of checklist group name, like this, or actually checklist group maybe like this. And we don't have a placeholder here, we don't need it, it's mostly for new forms, for new items. And that's it. And then in the controller, in the edit method, we will use route model binding. So checklist group, like this. And then we return the view of checklist groups edit compact checklist group, like this. And of course we need to change the parameters because PHP Storm is angry about that. Semicolon at the end. And let's see if it works. Refresh the page. Of course, it's not edit, it's admin checklist groups edit. Refresh now. Missing parameter update, another thing. So missing parameter update here. Update what, right? So checklist group. We can provide ID or it would be automatically provided. And now we have the group with exactly the value. Great. In update method, we actually do almost the same as here. And we can reuse the same form request because it is identical. So create, or actually store checklist group request. Instead of ID, we're using route model binding. So checklist group, like this. And we do checklist group update. Parameter is request validated. And then we return, redirect, I don't know, back or home actually. Let's try home. Home, good. Also, let's change the parameters here for PHP Storm. In here, we change the request to this one. And actually, we need to do the same thing for the store method, I now remembered. And let's try to update. So dot 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 at the end, enter. We're redirected to home and we have dot 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 on the left. Great. Now, how do we delete the checklist group? And let's add that to the same edit form. So we click here, we may edit checklist group or delete. So at the bottom, let's add a button with a form to destroy it. So we open up edit blade. And at the bottom of the card, we add another form. Let's actually auto-format it. So form of action route admin checklist groups destroy method post, then CSRF again, and method delete from what I remember. And we need just the button of, not button primary, but button danger. Type submit instead of save, delete. So let's see how it looks. Refresh. Oh, destroy what again? Destroy checklist group. Refresh. Okay, we have the delete, but it doesn't look really well. Let's add it a bit lower then. Like this. It should be totally separated. Okay, so delete. And let's actually even call it differently. Delete this checklist group. Like this. So it would be perfectly clear. And also let's add a confirmation, just plain JavaScript. So on click, return, confirm, are you sure? And that are you sure also should be in the translations. So again, like this, are you sure? Like this. So we click it, we can cancel, but if we do confirm, then we go into our checklist group controller and we have the destroy method. And again, here we use route model binding, so checklist group for checklist group, and we do checklist group delete. And remember, we have soft deletes here, so it's pretty safe to delete. Even if we have checklist items or checklists, it will not actually delete the record. And we return redirect to home again. Probably we will fix it later, but for now I don't really know where to redirect, and I will consult the client about that, because by the way, I'm creating this project for a real person, for a real client. And in the future videos I will get the feedback from him, and then we will tweak a lot of details according to that. So destroy works, and let's try to delete this checklist group. Okay, and it's gone from our sidebar. Great. Okay, so we're managing checklist group. Let's clean up the controller with the methods that we don't need. Let's delete them. We don't have index method. We don't have the show method. And probably that's it. So index show, everything else is actually used. Also, let's clean up the request. And let's do roughly the same with the checklists. So on the sidebar, add new checklist group. So similar here. For each of the checklists, and then after for each we add it here, sidebar link to checklists create, and in here, interesting, checklists create, we will have a parameter of group ID, or actually group with new checklist, and let's rename admin checklists to checklist groups checklists create. And in here I will show you double resource. It's kind of a resource in the resource controller. I'm not sure how it's called officially, but you can do something like this. Checklist groups dot checklists. And let me show you how it works. When you have the link to checklist create, you refresh, and now we have a problem that we don't see this child item. Let's actually copy the styling from this parent and child, and let's check if we didn't miss anything. So we have sidebar dropdown, and let's actually try to open it up, and that style changes, the class changes. So we need to add that class to our li. Li is this, so let's cut and paste. So cshow was the missing class, and then in the sidebar nav link in here for the base, so for the parent, we need to add a class dropdown toggle. Okay, now if we refresh, great, we have our AAA, a new checklist. Good. We click new checklist and see what is happening. We have URL of admin, checklist groups, then group ID, then checklists and create. As a result, in the checklist controller, in here, in every method, we need to add a parameter of checklist group. So checklist group, like this, and then we add that checklist group as a parameter of return view admin checklists create compact checklist group. Good. Update php.comment. Okay, PHP Storm helps us with that. And for the checklist create, all we need to do is go to create of checklist group, and we just do file save as with a different folder, checklists like this, and all we change is the store for the checklist, but we need to pass checklist group as well. New checklist group, new checklists in, or new checklist in, or actually let's make it outside of the translation. So checklist group name, like this, and then everything else is the same. Checklist group name, we rename this one, and I guess that's it. So we have checklists create. And let's refresh our page. It shouldn't be empty anymore. Checklist store is not defined. Oh, it's checklist groups. Checklist store. So checklist groups. Okay, new checklist in AAA. Exactly what we needed. So checklist name now should be posted to checklist controller store method. And let's create another form request. So store checklist request. And let's use store checklist request here. We go inside, we do authorize true, and then we provide name required and also unique, or actually it shouldn't be unique because it may be the same checklist in a different checklist group. So okay, let's leave it with unique. So checklist, we create the checklist create, request validated, but we have another parameter of checklist group. So checklist group, again, in every method, it should be added in the store, and update php.comment. And instead of having checklist create, we do checklist group, checklists create, like this. And then we return redirect. Route to home, again. Let's try it out. Refresh. BBB, for example, we save. Edit not defined because in the sidebar we haven't changed the URL from checklist groups edit, checklist groups, checklist edit. Checklist ID should be route model binding, and also we need checklist group here as well. Group checklist, like this. Then it should be working. In the sidebar we have AAA, BBB, and new checklist. Finally, we need to make edit and delete for this one. So edit works as an empty page. We just need to create that edit form. So we go checklist create, file save as, edit blade. So I did almost the same for checklist groups. Checklists update, and we need two parameters now, checklist group and checklist as well. This header should be edit checklist without these groups. Okay, then name, the value should be checklist name. Save is the same. Probably we are okay with everything else. In the controller we show we don't need the method of show. In edit we add return view admin checklists edit with compact of parameters, and those parameters will be checklist group, and then checklist. And then we pass both of them here, checklist group and checklist. Update PHP doc comment. And if we refresh, now we have the form. And let's update with the same store checklist request. And instead of ID, we have both parameters. Again, checklist group, and checklist. My font is actually too big to fit on the screen, but yeah, I think it's readable still. Checklist update, request validated. Like this, return, redirect to home. Update the PHP doc again. This is unused parameter, but we still need to pass that. And let's try to update. CCC, for example. Post is not supported. Of course, I forgot edit blade to have method put here. Refresh that, or ... for example. Yeah, it works, ... we have that. And finally delete. I will almost copy and paste it from checklist groups edit. Down below here in the checklist edit, let's reformat that a bit. I think it is on that level from what I remember. Checklists destroy, or actually checklist groups dot checklists destroy. Again, two parameters, checklist group and checklist. Method post, delete, are you sure? Delete this checklist. Okay, delete this checklist. We cancel, so confirmation works. And in the destroy method of checklist controller, all we do is checklist group, checklist, same two parameters with route model binding, and we do checklist delete, again with soft deletes, and return redirect to route home. Like this, and we update the parameters with PHP doc. Again, this parameter is unused, but it's present. And let's try to delete this checklist. Okay, and it's gone from our sidebar. So we've done with managing checklist groups and checklists. Of course, the styling is not that good, but we will work with styling separately when we will present to the client and get some feedback. But for now, this lesson is done, and see you in the next lesson of checklister creation.